Monument Valley, a game that gets individuals such as myself to be amazed with the beautiful landscape this world has to offer. We're greeted with a very simple mechanics on how the game works. After completion of the first stage, we're then brought in the level selection stage. The second stage of the game starts in the garden, which has this very warm and naturey vibe. It was at this stage that we're able to learn about the game's mechanics and how this thing really works. This stage can mess with someone's head, something that every game should be able to give to its uses. We then finish the stage with Ida, our main character's name, presenting her hat and a mysterious geometric shape figure coming out. The third stage, named Temple, starts off with this very cultural vibe similar to what we can see from shows like Kung Fu Panda and the likes. This was when I realized that each and every movement gives this very pleasant musical noise, as if you're making the piece yourself. As we enter the next stage of the game, the scenery completely changed, giving me this ominous and being alone, but at the end of the path, there appears to be some sort of deity who's waiting for our arrival. After our one-sided conversation, the next phase of the level presented itself, showing us that the journey has just begun. We then end this phase of the journey like how we did previously. As Chapter 4, the Water Palace presented itself, a very cool scenery similar to that of a pond can be viewed. It's also where the first appearance of the Crow people is, who's sitting on the ledge staring right at us. The next phase of the Water Palace is what gets to my head for the first time. As the perspective of the landscape changed, it really messed my head. It took me quite a while before realizing that interacting with the surroundings is the key to move forward. From that point on, I've learned to remember these things, which made the next steps sail smoothly. During the third phase of the Water Palace, remember that time when I said I've learned to look on the big picture? Hehe. After that dreadful phase, we're then brought to the ominous place where the deity, which we will now call Mommy, is waiting for us yet again. The fifth stage, named the Spiral, is Ida's first interaction with the Crow people. This scenery specifically gave me Tower Babel vibes, or the dungeons in Maggie the Labyrinth of Magic for my weebs out there. There's not much to be said about the second phase of this stage aside from the minor convenience of doing the puzzles and making the last crow clear a path for us, so let's just enjoy the scenery. The scenery after this is closer to that of the architecture we see from the Arabasta art from One Piece. Same with this next one. The final phase of this stage, although the same, gives me more of the night vibes from Aladdin more than anything, with its very cool aesthetic. We then move on to the sixth stage, entitled the Labyrinth. At first, I have no idea as to what I'm supposed to do, and decided to stay at the middle of the staircase, thinking what to do in this situation, not knowing the simple solution is to just proceed. And that's when I was greeted with a surprise, the totem friend. We then traverse the landscape together, solving what seems to be a Fireboy and Water adventure. What seemed to follow this void of a room is some sort of a high up in the mountain vibes from Avatar. Yes, that Avatar. If you know, you know. At the end of the stage, we are then brought to this porch side at the edge of the temple, and as usual, we then place our geometry and proceeded to move across this body of water, probably an ocean. And our totem friend, who we'll call Josh, followed us and was sent to the abyss of the depths.
What the dog doing?
The Rookery was the name of the 7th chapter, and what quickly caught my eye was that Ida was nowhere to be seen. This went on for quite a while before I realized that what I need to do was guide the crowman, which will call Itachi from this point on to the pressure plate for our Ida to be freed. What then followed was this castle-looking structure in the skies, which pretty much was fortunately very simple, aside from the fact that Itachi is constantly trying to hinder our progress.
Bruh.
During the following part of the chapter, we then meet Mami again along with this crazy geometric illusion up top, with Itachi is just wandering about endlessly. The final part of the chapter seems very straightforward, so let's just enjoy the scenery. Chapter 8 The Box, in which There Lies Strange Delight really speaks for itself. At first, I didn't know how things were going to proceed at this point, and it left me pretty confused like that Itachi part earlier. It took me quite a while to find Ida and switch these lighthouses on with their corresponding color. After doing so, I was greeted with a surprise that brought the fun literally outside the box. As things outside were finally settled, the entire jigsaw shut itself and gave us this satisfying end sequence. The 9th chapter, Descent. Man, these stage names are really getting quite obvious, but in a very pleasing manner, as we start on the summit of this stone structure, surrounded by water on both top and below us. I won't speak much, so just enjoy the show. As we descend further, the stage itself reveals this beautifully thought out landscape. And at the bottom there presents itself our good old friend Josh. After successfully entering the core of the place, this upside down pyramid structure presented itself, and as I traversed this path, I was literally lost for about... But luckily I was able to piece things out and further descent, leaving the warm atmosphere and proceeding to what seems to be a cold and lifeless path. Moments later, we then see this figure on the other side of the mirror, which seems to reflect our image in a different way. Mami is there yet again, so let's see what she has to say. As we go the final descent, we're then greeted by what seems to be men that were captured in this realm. We then gift the flower from earlier, and that concludes the chapter. Chapter 10 Observatory, was the most headacheing chapter for me, and you'll see why in a minute. The other parts of this chapter were quite manageable, which was a big help in this journey. Well, all but this spiny spine donut thing. As we finish the observatory, I'll let the visuals do the talking for me, as I still to this day don't fully get its flow aside from the fact that Itachis were finally free from being held or something and Ida become their queen somehow. Hope you've enjoyed what you've watched, and if you did, you can support the channel by hitting the sub button as we're trying to reach 1,000 subs, hopefully, before the end of 2022. Paalam!